What is up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Destination the Show. This is episode 92, Twins ownership mess and catching up with trade deadline acquisitions. My name is Jamie Cameron, joined as always by the inevitable Geremy Nygaard. Jeremy, how are you?
The inevitable. What does that mean? Like,
It means that
no
no
matter
matter
what you try to do, I'm going to always show up.
that's exactly what I was driving towards, man. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, you didn't tell me that we were recording tonight. I just happened to pop online and at the right time. Long day, getting back in the swing of school. So I came home. I sat down. I turned on the Twins, and here we go. Let's talk.
Let's do this thing. Okay, we're gonna keep the opening chit chat to a minimum. Jump right into housekeeping, then dig in because we got a full bag of topics today. Starting with housekeeping stuff, ways that you can support the show. We really appreciate everyone's engagement. Ways that you can support us: liking and subscribing on your preferred podcast platform of choice. Bonus points if you choose to leave a review. That really helps us grow the show. Liking, retweeting episodes, also very helpful. You can find all of our stuff on YouTube at Destination the Show is a handle there if you want to for some reason see us in person while we yammer on about the Twins minor league system. If you want to send us a question, you can do so on Twitter. The handle is at DTS_pod1 on Blue Sky, at Destination the Show, or send us an email, destinationtheshow@gmail.com. Jeremy, it's been a couple of, well, I actually don't know how long it's been. It's been at least a week. But when we last got together was Friday morning, and my voice
that was just a couple days ago.
No, but what I meant to say is it's been about a week since the news came out about the Twins ownership U-turn, and we deliberately left that alone last time around, but I do feel like it's worth digging in. Basically, our plan for this episode is we're going to catch up with every acquisition the Twins made at the trade deadline and ask, how are they settling in? Are there any notable stories, notable performances, notably bad performances, anything of interest, really? So we're going to go trade by trade, blow by blow, and talk about all those guys and how they're doing. But there are some news and notes for us to dig into first, not least of which is the Pohlads decision to do a U-turn and say they are no longer selling the team, but taking on additional limited partnerships. We don't know all of the details there yet, other than supposedly this is going to clear the 400-ish million in debt that they have on the team. Your reaction to this news, I guess, number one, and then number two, how do you think, or what implications does this have from your perspective in 2026 and beyond?
So my reaction, and I wish I would have went back and listened to what I had to say when the news originally came out that they were going to sell, because I feel like I
know what you said.
What did I say?
I mean, I paraphrase, but the gist was, I'll believe it when I see it.
That's exactly how I felt. Like I felt.
Yeah.
So the whole thing just smelt funny from the get-go, right? We want to sell the team because we don't have any money because the debt, but we still want to run the team.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing was awful. And then the report comes out where, there's a lot of people interested. And then I was never really felt like that was true either. And so then there was the Ishbia that was allegedly very interested.
The Ishbia.
And then he did his thing with the White Sox. And then it was like crickets forever.
Yeah.
And so when I got the release and read it, I was like, that's like the worst news. And the thing that just, it kind of still sets poorly with me is we still know who these other people are.
Yeah.
So basically they're just anonymous people that gave a group of people that are not real great at running a business a get out of jail free card, and now they can get back to running their business exactly how they did previously, which put them in $420 million of debt. That's not like good practice. So how is this going to impact the team? Well, The Twins are going to trade Joe Ryan in the offseason.
I don't agree with that. I think it's much more likely they trade Pablo Lopez.
See, I don't think they will. I think they'll keep Pablo. I think they'll keep Buxton. I think they'll trade Joe Ryan, and they'll play on the cheap. They're going to be like the Midwest version of the Pittsburgh Pirates.
That's fine, but if you're playing on the cheap, why are you trading a guy who's going to make $6 million as opposed to a guy who's making 23?
Because I think with Pablo's injury, it's just going to be a little bit harder. I'm sure they'll listen. I just think they can get more for Joe Ryan.
Yeah, but hold on. But just to play devil's advocate here for a second, the picture you painted was Pittsburgh Pirates West, right? Where I was like trying to figure out my directions. Where like the bottom line is running efficiently, and by that we mean cheaply. We don't really mean efficiently.
Right.
The Brewers run efficiently. So surely then it makes sense to hold your starting pitcher who's a top 10 pitcher in the American League, keep him for all of 2026. You could still conceivably trade him in the 2026 offseason with one full year of control in the winter meetings. Assuming Pablo gets 5 or 6 starts down the stretch here, he proves to everyone that he's healthy and that he can work back to like 6 innings of 2-run balls, 6 Ks, whatever he normally does. Surely that seems like the move if you're going to be mimicking an organization like the Pirates, which I'm not saying they're trying to do, or like, they're operating like Tampa Bay, which is like on a shoestring budget and relying on drafting and development and all that good stuff. It just still doesn't strike me that Joe Ryan is like the obvious one to trade. I don't understand that.
I think there's cost certainty with your guys that are signed to deals. Like, sure, that's what it's going to cost. You know how long it's going to cost that, and you have your control for however, right? Same as Buxton. It doesn't make sense to trade Buxton to keep James Outman, right? You know what one's going to cost. You're not necessarily sure what the other is going to cost. Either way, I think at the end of the offseason, we're going to talk about an opening day payroll that it's like, man, that's come down a long way.
What's your over-under number on the opening day payroll for 2026?
Oh, goodness. I don't even, what was it this year? 120?
120 something, down from 156. I should have prepared for this conversation that we talked about having.
I would guess.
Is it over or under 100?
Over 100. Under what it was this year. Like, it's going to be hard. It's not going to be hard. I would be hard pressed to believe that they're gonna get under 100 million. It would be disappointing.
I mean, it would, and yet they've had the highest payroll in the AL Central for like 5 years running, and they're gonna miss the playoffs for the 4th time in 5 years.
Right.
And so I'm not saying that lowering payroll is a good thing. Obviously, I think my bigger worry, and here's where I'll steer us next, is like we both work in education, right? Which is like we're working with really complex systems. And I think it's fair to say that a baseball team and any sports organization is a really complicated system.
Mm-hmm.
And I just personally feel like there's a fair amount of like credence to some level of change on a consistent basis is healthy for an organization to continue to kind of like grow, evolve, etc. And the level of kind of like stagnancy here that we're seeing with the Twins, with ownership, with front office, Falvey, Rocco, etc. It's clear that the on-field product just isn't working or hasn't worked, right? With the exception of that one great season. And they've tried very marginal change. And by that, we mean changing the hitting coaches. And the hitting coach that they fired is now leading the best offense in the AL in Toronto. Right. And so my like worry, and I'm curious whether you think this matters or not, is just like we're running back the same systems and structures that are creating the on-field product. So I have no reason to feel a ton more confident in what the 2026 on-field product is going to look like.
Yeah, and I think that's entirely fair. Before the trade deadline, when it was like over under on trades, right? Lavelle took 0.
He did not
you
like
said
me caught up with that.
you said somewhere I took the over, and I think what I said was just burn it down and start over, right? And I like having a guy like Byron Buxton in the outfield. I like having Pablo lead the rotation, but you could build a very competitive team, in my opinion, in the Central.
Yeah.
Without spending a lot on the outside and understanding that you're going to just have to take your lumps for a season or two.
Mm-hmm.
If that means that Walker Jenkins is playing a half season before he maybe should, if that means Kalen Culper is playing a couple months before he should, if that means, bringing up a guy that's, I think, way back, like Jeremy Bonderman. Remember when he played for the Tigers?
Yeah.
He was awful in his first season. He lost like 20 games, but it was like you let these guys take the lumps, and then the next year it's something, and then the next year it's something else, and that was kind of like the Torrey Hunter, Jock Jones, Corey Koski era, where it was like, now we're going to let these young kids give this a shot, and if you're ever going to do that, do it when you have 6 top 100 prospects, 4 of which are AA or higher. Do it when you have 9 potential starting pitchers under control for 6 years, right?
Yep.
And so if you wanted to go that way, you could certainly do it with a payroll under 100 million. That would be a hard one, I think, to sell to fans. Walker Jenkins might sell tickets. Kayla Culper might sell tickets.
Here's where I land on that. And like, I'm not married to the idea. Like, in general, I think spending is good, and I would prefer that my team spends more. I don't think it precludes you from being successful and having a winning product. What my kind of like look for is for the org over the offseason are, do we see evidence of them doing things that are different than what they've done? No. Right. So like right. And so I guess that's me saying that's what I'm looking for this offseason, right? Because, there was some narrative after the trade deadline here that we like gently poked fun at, I think, a little bit, where the thinking or the reflections were, well, we want to get like faster and more athletic and be able to play good defense. And we were like, well, how did it take 7 years to figure out that those things are good?
Right.
But like, what I'm going to pay real attention to is, do we see evidence in their roster construction? And some guys that have some of that are getting chances now, like Keishel. Outman's up, getting some hits. Interesting. But do we see evidence in the offseason that they're moving in that direction and they are not kind of repeating what hasn't worked? That's going to be important to me in terms of how glued in and invested I am in the 2026 season, because I think it's pretty fair. And we're like, we love this, right? Like, we're all in pretty much. And I think you've become reinvigorated in the amount that you're interested in particular in the big league roster since the trade deadline, because that was just such a fascinating change of pace. But I also wouldn't blame people for feeling apathetic and just being completely switched off at this point by how the last 2 years have gone.
Oh, 100%. If you're not following the minor leagues, the trade deadline was like the straw that breaks the camel's back on fandom, right? It's like, wait a second, these are guys that I've finally started to come around on, and you just traded 10 of them?
Yeah.
Like, that would be a really tough pill to swallow. And I think the reality is that a majority of baseball fans give zero what's about the prospect in AA.
Yeah.
And so that's what makes it really hard. Like, the Twins are awful. The Twins are going to be awful without really understanding that there's some dudes that aren't far away that are going to be better than the guys that got traded away.
Yep.
It's just a matter of, and very fair question to ask, is this front office and coaching staff capable of leading that group of players to the playoffs?
Particularly like the offense. I mean, for me, and I'm sure we'll continue to marinate on this. It's going to be a long winter. I'm so interested to see how this lineup is going to turn out, and I think in a future episode in the next few weeks, what we should do is kind of prognosticate who's going to be on this roster, what spots we think are open, what the payroll might look like, the pitching side, the hitting side, because in particular, the hitting side, I mean, there is opportunity here for folks. And I put up a piece at Twins Daily today about Kyler Fedko, who has an outside shot at a 30-30 season, which is really unbelievable. And I came away with a conclusion about him, which isn't necessarily what I expected, but he doesn't really hit the ball that hard, but he is a master of like pulling the ball in the air, which was kind of the original thing that this front office lent on in terms of building an offense. But there's opportunities for guys like him, right? Maybe he's the fourth outfielder type along with Wallner, Roden, and Buxton. And I'm sure Outman's in that mix too. But those are fun storylines for folks who followed the minor leagues with interest in the last 4 or 5 weeks here.
Well, if anybody's like curious, like, hey, what'd you two guys do last night? We texted about Kyler Fedko.
We're such losers, dude.
That's what we spent our night doing.
But we texted about someone else too. So this will be our segue from some ownership chat into some Connor Prielipp chat, because again, shortly, I think the day after we last recorded, Connor Prielipp was promoted to AAA. He made his first start last night. He has since today been placed on the development list. And just to, like, some people have asked about this, so it might be worth spending a second on it. The development list is never a cause for concern. It is primarily used for two purposes. One is to give a guy a break, and the second is to manage the roster and manage numbers. Prielipp isn't going to pitch again for another week. St. Paul wanted another arm. He goes to the development list. He'll be back next week. He'll make a start next week. But you were in a seat for the beginning of that Prielipp start. I got home from a soccer practice a little ways in. What did you make of what you saw from Prielipp in his first stab at a AAA lineup?
Yeah, I was in a seat on my couch. Thought about going to the game and then realized, you know what, I can watch it from home, where I can see, the radar gun, and the fastball looked as advertised. His first strikeout came on like a 97.6 mile an hour fastball that was high in the zone, which I think is going to be where he's going to have to do some damage. The slider looked really good. He gave up hits. Like, he gave up a shot, the home run. He walked some guys. I think he walked 2 guys to start the second inning. So there's definitely some rough around the edges, but he took the ball. He threw his, 4 or 5 innings. He was in long. He was
3.1.
He was pitching when Joe Ryan wasn't, even though the game started a little bit later. And so I thought, for making his first start in AAA, there's obviously Major League Baseball stuff. It's just he's gonna have to refine things, because it's probably the command of the pitches that's not great.
Yeah.
And I think that comes with having your elbow reconstructed a couple times, right?
For sure. I mean, I gotta say, dude, I shouldn't be surprised, but I found it's gonna sound annoying. I found people's reactions to Prielipp's performance to be annoying. There were people who were like, well, he didn't miss any bats in like the third and fourth inning. And I was like, okay, why don't we start with the things that he did well? He struck out 5. His heater was up to 98. It's not a great shape. The slider, he threw a slider, if StatCast isn't broken, that had 3,407 RPMs of spin on it. and you said to me online, what percentile would that be? Or that would be like 99th percentile. I believe that would be the highest spin slider in baseball by a decent margin. I'm pretty sure. And so there's traits there. I think what you said about the command is spot on, and that's in line with what he's done at AA this year. The one difference is, and I think you could forgive a guy for being a little amped up in his first start at a new level, he has not been walking guys to that level this year. He walked 4 and 3.1 innings. At AA, he's been sitting 68, 67, 70% strikes even. And so that was, I think, just an adjustment. He has been giving up hits because he peppers the zone. He doesn't necessarily command the edges, and he only has 3 pitches. So if you can figure out how to sit on the fastball, that's not it's good velocity, but it's not like an outstanding pitch. And so I just, like, for me, my overall takeaway was like, he had a pretty good night. He got in some long counts, especially in the second inning, probably got a little bit tired, but he showed the makings of someone that can pitch in the majors. Now, what that role is,
right,
is really the question. And I think, and I'm curious for your take here, is it more or less likely since the trade deadline that Connor Prielipp is a starter in 2026, or because they acquired Bradley, they acquired Abel, they acquired Kendry Rojas, or do you put the odds roughly the same and say, let's see how things unfold over the winter and into the spring?
Yeah, I would say if I was betting, it's less likely because there's now more starters, right? There's more competition, and for certain, Taj Bradley is closer to the majors.
Yeah,
for certain, Mick Abel's closer to the majors.
Agreed.
I don't think it's got to be significantly down. And part of me, I don't know who did it. Maybe a Baseball America guy. Like, earned run average of left-handed pitchers is significantly lower than right-handed pitchers.
I have not read that, but that's interesting because the Twins have several intriguing lefty starters.
And so to me, it's like, I don't know that it really, the guy that I think it impacted the most is David Festa. So I think that Connor Prielipp was probably more likely to be a bullpen guy. I still think Connor Prielipp is more likely to be a bullpen guy. David Festa, before the trade deadline, I would have said, yeah, he's probably like your fringe 5th starter moving forward. And now I'm more like, it makes sense for David Festa to be a back end guy when needed. Maybe keep him stretched out, but it's stuff like that. But going back to Prielipp, I think the Twins would be wise to continue to develop him as a starter.
Agreed. And so it's interesting that you brought up that parallel with Festa. Last thing I'll say on Prielipp, the one thing that Festa and Prielipp have in common for the most part, they throw 3 pitches, as opposed to, we've talked about this Festa and Zebby comparison where Zebby throws 5. All I'll say is this: make sure you tune in to Connor Prielipp's next start when he comes off the development list, because I think there's a good chance you might see a 4th pitch debuting in his second start at AAA.
That's all you'll say.
That's all I'll say. Okay. Prielipp, good start. Excited to see him at AAA. That's fun. Let's start digging into these trades. Look, I don't know if I even got this right chronologically. I think I did. We're going to try and do it chronologically and go in the order in which they happen and just do like a quick 5 minutes on the guys acquired in each one. We'll lean in and spend more time, if it's multiple guys, on the guy we've talked about least so far. So let's start with the Chris Paddack trade. Chris Paddack traded to Detroit, and I got to say, it's been extremely healing for me watching the Twins absolutely crush Paddack on 2 separate occasions now. That's been really fun. In return, the Twins received Enrique Jimenez. Now, this was before they acquired Eduardo Tait. Jimenez listed as a catcher first baseman. He's 19, switch hitter, listed at 5'9", 170. Got that low center of gravity you need in a catcher. And you've texted me you've been really on it with him. You texted me and you're like, Jimenez might be a dude.
Mm-hmm.
With all of these guys, right? Let's just get the caveat out the way that it's tiny sample sizes. But this is his first taste of A-ball, 12 games so far, and he's hitting 282, 472, 538 with 3 bombs, walking 26% of the time, striking out 24%, which is tolerable. A 185 WRC plus for a 19-year-old in A-ball. I mean, we've talked about Tait a lot as, one of the 4 youngest players at that level. Jimenez can't be super far off. What do you make of his start and how he's looked so far?
So, what's fun is that when the trade happened, Paddock out, Jimenez in, it was like arguably he's the new best or highest rated catcher in the system.
Yeah.
And so the thing was, it's like he's not overly big. Is he going to catch? He obviously isn't going to play first at 5'9", 170. I would guess that's not accurate.
I'm sure it's not.
And then all of a sudden he starts hitting bombs, and I mean they're the ones that he's hit that I've seen.
Not cheap.
They're not even a little cheap.
Yeah.
And so, he's one of I think 4 catchers on that roster. He's not catching all the time, but he's a switch hitter, which the Twins have not really had a lot of behind the plate. And he's going to be just a step behind Tait the whole way up. So we're probably not talking about 26, right? We're probably not talking about 27. But if you have your future backstops, like Tait, we could be talking about 27. Like right now, I think if you're forecasting into the future, you feel pretty good about having your backstops of the future secured in Tait and Jimenez. And again, that could go completely sideways because it's not even double A ball for either of these guys.
Right.
But I feel way better about it now than I did 23 days ago.
But not to mention, you also have guys like Zhao and your kind of your class of like, here are athletes who are good hitters who also do some catching. And now you've significantly widened the net of like, okay, we have 2 kind of front runners here potentially. And if someone else works out, that's kind of a bonus. The thing I love about Jimenez, dude, and like, obviously he'll cool off here. Just it's a good approach, man. Like, in 2025, in 60 games, he's walking 15% of the time. Sign me up for that from any dude in the minor league system, and I'm taking it because, especially at a position, of defensive value like catcher, you're giving yourself such a good offensive floor if you walk 13, 14, 15% of the time. He just gets on base, right? And so that lessens the pressure on the bat. Obviously, the catcher defense evaluation is always something that's kind of tricky, but hard not to be encouraged by his start. It's been pretty good.
So here's my question for you. Tait right now in high A, he played 7 games there before he got traded. He's played 16 cents, and he's only batting 222 for the Colonels with 3 home runs. Is there any way that you could see when teams roll out next year, Tait being in Double A and Jimenez being in High A, or do we have to start the year at the current levels?
I would say that's a fun question to think about, and like, it surely depends on what the rest of the org construction is. I think if you're a betting person, you would put the money on them starting at the level that they're currently at, just because both are so young for the level. Both have had relatively few games. Let's see how Jimenez continues, right? But he was, if I'm remembering correctly, he repeated either the complex or the DSL. Tait's obviously been pushed super aggressively. He's not really lighting the world on fire yet, and I am not concerned about that at all. If you look at the flashes of Tait, damn. I mean, damn, dude. Like
He's for real.
18, 116, 114 off the bat. Like, it's ridiculous. So let's just give him some time to marinate. I would guess they start at the same level next year. And what you look for is Jimenez to finish next year at Cedar Rapids and Tait to finish at Wichita.
Right. And I would agree with that. I just, when you look at the organizational depth at catcher, right? You have Jeffers right now and Mickey Gasper. And then you go down to AAA and Pareda, who they wouldn't even have a courtesy look to. Like, he can't be a part of the future.
I think Winkle has a chance to be a backup type internally.
So Winkle at almost 26 can start the year at AAA. And Langolier's just hit a home run on the top of the 10th, so that's fine.
Hey, just cruising up the draft lottery odds. It's all good, bro.
At AA right now, Andrew Cassetti, who I'm not sure how much longer he sticks.
No. I don't think so.
Nate Baez, I'm not sure how much he actually catches, but I think he'll stick around, right?
For sure.
But it's like, is he going to move up to AAA next year? Otherwise,
I think he will. Baez. Okay. So he's had he's been in Wichita for about a month at this point, and he's had a really good year in the minors for sure.
So Olivar is currently scheduled to be a minor league free agent.
And he's on the injured list right now too, so that'll be interesting.
But he could come back and be at AA. But then they're going to have to bring up somebody else. Right now, Zhao's hurt.
Yeah, I think the chances are they'll add a free agent backup this offseason. That seems
to the major leagues.
Yeah,
but that still doesn't. I mean, the trickle down here is not great, right?
100%.
Because there's just not a ton of depth. Like in Cedar Rapids, along with Tait right now, is Zhao, who's hurt, Luis Hernandez, who was just signed as a non-draft free agent, Pancho Ruiz, who was signed a couple years ago as a non-draft free agent, and a Rule 5 guy they picked up from the Dodgers, the minor league portion. Like, these are not none of those, aside from Zhao, none of the healthy guys are more than filler.
Yeah.
And so there's just a lot of opportunities for those guys, for Tait and Jimenez, to be pushed, and if they're able to, if they're ready for it. And that's going to be a huge question. I would guess both of them probably play winter ball, right?
Okay, I like that.
I mean, that would be my assumption.
Yeah. I didn't even think about it.
And so let's see how those guys do. But I feel like there's a chance that they could both, like, even if they're average behind the dish, they could both be kind of accelerated, because the bats are really gonna play on both those guys. But we talked way too much about that trade.
Okay, let's move on. Okay, well, you don't need to talk about Tait that much, I think, because we've talked about him a lot in recent weeks. I think the verdict, right, is like defense, who knows, but like the arm is super legit. Power, obviously, plus and legit. Swing decisions are the area of growth here. Dude, he's running I just had it in front of me, almost a 62% swing rate. That's really high. He's just going to need to, it's the question is, if he's going to be what he could be, which is a 30 home run hitting catcher, can he rein in, bless you in advance, can he rein in the approach, swing less, and attack in the zone where he can do damage? The Twins have done that well with Keishel. They've done it well with Culpepper. Others, I would bet good money that they can improve that. It's a must. Otherwise, he's just going to be in too much kind of weak contact. Anything else from you on Tait before we move on to talk about Mick Abel?
No, aside from him being very impressive in controlling the run game.
Yeah.
That to me was a little unexpected. Dude's got a bazooka behind the dish.
He does. Okay, dude. Let's talk about Mick Abel. So Abel is really interesting. We haven't talked about him a ton. And he's had 3 starts with the Saints, and 2 have been excellent and 1 has been bad. And I think that's helpful because it's instructive in that it kind of shows, I think, what does good Mick Abel look like and what does bad Mick Abel look like. I bet you will have the game logs in front of you sooner than I do. But I think in his last start, he went like 6. He struck out 11. I want to say it was a like record for the Saints. He walked none, I want to say, in his last start, but the start before that, he walked 4, and he just could not lock in on the zone. And he limited damage, but he was so inefficient. And he was made to work so hard that it was just a real struggle. It also seems like Geremy Abel has added a sweeper, which is super interesting, right? And we had all the speculation of like, oh, why is he going to AAA? Like he's already been in the majors with the Phillies. Well, that's why, because they've got stuff they want to work with him on. But it's been 15.1 innings so far for St. Paul, a 1.76 ERA, striking out over 40% of hitters. He's walking a little too many at 10.7%, a 2.53 FIP. I mean, that's just a continuation and even an improvement on his level of dominance at AAA with the Phillies. What do you make of Abel, his sweeper, and how he's shaping up so far?
Yeah, I have terrible luck with the MILB web pages, so I can't even pull up his game log because it just all brings me back to the same page. But I did see whoever does like the pitch track stuff, that they showed that sweeper, and he didn't throw it a ton, but it looked very much like a different offering, right? And it did things that his other pitches didn't. It had success that his other pitches didn't. And I think that's kind of the long and the short of this. They're not going to add a pitch at this point in his development and then move him out and not have him in the rotation, right? And so if you can put him and Bradley in to a rotation that's already got Zebby next year,
and one of Pablo Lopez or Joe Ryan,
right? And or maybe one of Pablo, Joe Ryan, or Bailey Over, right? Who knows? But that's the thing, like, because on the front half you have those 3 guys, but on the back half you have Sim, you have Festa, you have all these other arms.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Mick Abel will at 20. What, he'll be 20. He just turned 24. Literally just turned 24 like 2 days ago. You'll have him like slot into the 4 or 5 spot at 24 with his stuff.
Yeah.
That's pretty encouraging, right?
I think so. I also think that it's worth just counterbalancing and saying you're relying on a lot going right with this hypothetical 2026 rotation. You know what I mean? Let's just say, for argument's sake, they trade one of Pablo or Joe Ryan. You know you have a playoff caliber starter at the top of the rotation. Let's say Bailey Ober is somewhere between this season and his previous excellent season, so he's your, kind of solid, like, number 2 guy, just for argument's sake. You need a lot to go right with Zebby taking a step forward, Bradley, who's been fine, but like very much a back-end guy in his 300 major league innings, even though he's super young, Abel taking a step forwards, and then, whoever you want from your litany of other guys, Prielipp, Rojas, Andrew Morris, Marco Ryan. I mean, there's like a million guys. I guess my just like small counterpoint is you have a couple of guys who don't take the step forward you wanted them to. You have a couple of injuries, and suddenly your rotation is looking very messy and very, very inexperienced. And I think that's a gauntlet the Twins are probably going to have to walk next year. And so, I mean, this sounds like super obvious, but I feel like this rotation's being set up more for 2027 potentially than 2026, which like is kind of a cop-out thing that no one really wants to hear given how things have gone in the last couple of seasons.
But that's exactly how this is, right? We talk about having playoff caliber starters. We don't even need to have that conversation if we're not talking about a playoff caliber team. And I think, in the right world, if things turn out perfectly, sure, they could compete. But the reality is we're not looking at the Twins in 2026 and saying we expect you to make a run in October, right? And so you get to audition 10, 11, 12 different guys that may start. And if they don't, could be pretty good relievers. I mean, Travis Adams had a start where he looked all of the parts of a major leaguer.
Sure.
But he could very much be a low leverage reliever. He maybe has the stuff to be a little bit better than that. And so that's why it's just so hard. It's just gather as many assets as you can that are near major league ready. I would argue they have more pitchers that are major league ready than they did in the last 2 years. And I know for a fact, I said that they've never had this many major league ready pitchers ever. And so I said that 2 years ago, and now there's more. And so I think they've put themselves in a situation where they're, and this is not to 2026, but they're in a really good position to compete sooner, not super soon, but sooner, rather than being completely hopeless, which a lot of times teams in a rebuild, we've seen this, right? The Rockies, the A's, like, what are you guys doing? Like, you don't have anything at the major level, but you also don't have anything at the minor league level.
Yeah.
And I think that the Twins are in a much better situation
For sure.
to get better. But, that's coming off the heels of Royce Lewis, Matt Wallner, Luke Keishel's now up. Like, all of these guys that should have been the compliments. Eddie Julian didn't get it done. Jose Miranda's awful. Like, these are the guys that were supposed to be the answers to the last wave and be the supporting cast. So that's why. I mean, it's frustrating.
Agreed, 100%. And every time you mention the offense, I clench my jaw. I'm not ready to dig in on what that looks like for 2026. It makes me nervous. Let's move on and dig into another trade, the Harrison Bader trade to the Phillies. This was fairly early on during the day of the trade deadline itself. They received 2 prospects in return. I actually want to start with Geremy Villoria because we really haven't spoken about him. So they received Hendry Mendez, who we'll get to, and Geremy Villoria back from the Phillies. Villoria was traded when he was 16, and that feels like he shouldn't be able to do that. But whatever. It really does. Like, what? He turned 17 a week ago. Listed at 6'2", 175. He was one of the better arms coming out of his international cycle. I mean, we don't have to spend a ton of time on him. I think we're probably in agreement that he's absolutely a lottery ticket. However, he's a fun lottery ticket. 22 innings in the DSL this year between the Twins and Phillies, striking out 25.5% of hitters, walking only 7.4%, a 308 FIP. I mean, just really good results. It's good stuff too. Let's revisit this conversation in 7 years, Geremy. Anything to add on Villoria? He's just so ridiculously far away. Hasn't thrown a pitch in the U.S. Who cares? Kind of, with respect.
Yeah, kind of, but also, and I feel like I have this right. The Twins and the Phillies share a complex.
Correct.
In the Dominican.
Yeah.
And so the Twins have seen this kid a lot, right? And it's one thing to have, seen a guy when they're 14 playing against 14-year-olds. It's another thing to get a guy signed just a week ago, turned 17, and be able to watch him play against usually other 16, 17-year-olds, but other professionals in a professional setting. Mm-hmm. So there's obviously something that the Twins saw in Villoria that said, hey, we want this guy. And that can be exciting. The likelihood of a 16-year-old reaching the major leagues, though, a specific 16-year-old, is so low, right? I mean, we're talking single-digit percentage chance, and probably a low single-digit number. So, yeah, we'll certainly watch. We'll certainly follow. And if he's still in the organization in 3 years, that's a win in itself. For a couple of months of the very likable Harrison Bader.
Very likable Harrison Bader, who runs weird, by the way.
Because his pants are tight.
His he looks like he should be in like Stranger Things or like he looks like
Stevie or what?
Like the older brother. Dang, I forget his name. The redheaded girl's older brother in Stranger Things, who also kind of looks like early career Joe Ryan. Harrison Bader has that look of like he's like an 80s movie villain type of a deal. I loved Harrison Bader. I would enjoy him back. Yeah, let's talk about Hendry Mendez quick. Dude, I saw a thread online today that was like Hendry Mendez is going to become a top 50 prospect next year. And I was like, what are we talking about here?
Someone wrote that.
Let us know.
Did they send it into it?
I didn't read it. 21 years old at AA, left-handed hitting outfielder, came over from the Phillies. I think we'd probably put him in the 20s in the Twins organization. Has had a great season at AA. So we'll do his numbers combined for Philly and Minnesota. 98 games at AA. He's at 301, 383, 439, a 133 WRC plus. Walks at a healthy clip, 11.5%. Exceptional bat to ball skills. Twins lose. Exceptional bat to ball skills. 12.7% K rate. The pop has come along a little bit this year. 9 home runs, 8 with the Phillies, just 1 with the Twins so far. I mean, I just like he's really patient. It's obviously borderline outstanding bat to ball skills at 86% overall contact rate. I can't get past the ground ball rate with this dude. It's 54%, which if a pitcher had a ground ball percentage of 55%, you would call that elite. This guy hits a ball on the ground so much. Like if he cannot elevate and celebrate a little bit, I don't know that it's gonna work. Although like he's putting up good production. But I think also the supplementary tools are not really great. Like he's not a good defender. So to me, this profile is like a corner platoon bat from the left side, kind of like Gabby Gonzalez, but left-handed, right. Which is fine. Like that's great. But I'm a little bit wary of someone who hits the ball on the ground that much. What do you think about Mendez so far and what he's done this year?
I think there are tools, maybe tools, not so traits that are valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you can have that in a not yet 22-year-old who's 6'3", 175, like there's stuff there. We talked about it, whether that was on air or not on air. Like, does he make sense as a first baseman type? I think that makes more sense than adding him into this outfield mix.
Yeah.
But if you're going to play at the very, very end of the bottom of the defensive spectrum, you better bring more than your 21 career minor league home runs to the plate. Yep. And so, but at the same time, there's usable skills. So there's no rush, right? There's no like we don't need to be in a hurry here. I'm trying to look. He needs to be added. He would need to be added Rule 5 this winter.
This winter, okay, interesting.
That's what I have listed. Okay. Could I be wrong? It could be.
Same for Gabby Gonzalez. So, who, by the way, after everyone yelled at me for not calling him the next coming of Michael Kadire or Kirby Puckett, has a WRC plus of 80 at AAA so far.
Since they said
it's only 13 games, but he's struggled a little bit so far.
So I mean, I think he's not yet 22. He's almost a full year younger than Kalen Culpepper. He is a full year older than Walker Jenkins, but there's it's not like we're like cut him, right? Yep. I think
for sure
probably add him to the 40 man and see like the same way that Severino was added to the 40 man, right? Completely different players, completely different profiles, but you add a guy and you're like, well, there's usable traits, there's usable tools, and we'll go from there.
Yep. Okay, next trade was Brock Stewart. This was the one on trade deadline day where we heard Brock Stewart went to the Dodgers. We started dreaming about exciting prospects down the ladder, and they got back 28-year-old left-handed hitting outfielder James Outman, who is now up with the big league team. And there's some interesting traits. I'll use your word. Some speed, some solid defense, a lot of questions about his offense and swing and miss. I don't really have much to say about Outman. He's played like 2-3 games in the majors. I think like we can maybe revisit the Outman conversation if he has a productive final 4 or 5 weeks of the season. I don't know. He's just like kind of in a clearly like fourth spot to me in the 2026 outfield depth chart behind Buck, Wallner, and Alan Roden. And I'm assuming they're trading or ditching Trevor Larnach this offseason. Do you have any strong thoughts on Outman? And like we just haven't really seen much of him yet, so I don't have a ton to say.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of strong thoughts. I think, when he comes into the organization, the casual fan would say, okay, so he's a really good fielder and he's not great with the bat. And they watched tonight's game where I'm pretty sure he had multiple hits and completely turned a routine fly ball into a circus. But the part that you don't trade for a guy who's on his last option at 28 years old without just writing his name in pen for the next season. Right? He has to be on the major league roster next year.
In what role, though?
Back. He's a bench guy.
Well, but I want Kyler Fedko to be the bench guy because then you have 2 lefties and 2 righties. James Outman, who strikes out 40% of the time in the majors even as a bench bat outfielder, does not excite me. Like that's Deshaun Kiersey-esque all over again.
That's fine. But I think you can use that 13th spot however you want, and the guy better be able to pinch run.
Okay.
And so as a late game substitution, when you're fast and you can play defense, you can be the 13th hitter, and Kyler Fedko can be the 4th outfielder, right? And
yeah, but I see what you're saying. And at the same time, we also saw a stretch with Kiersey this year, right? Where didn't he play? There was like a stretch of like 21 days where he didn't play, or he played one game in like 21 days. And so if that's your, I don't know, like what's the point then?
But don't you feel if you have a 28-year-old that you just don't have a need for because you don't need a late game defensive sub or pinch runner, like you feel better about having a 28-year-old on the bench than a prospect that's not getting any reps?
Sure, 100%. I guess I'm more so just ruining the fact that Outman still 2 weeks, 3 weeks after the trade deadline is just someone who does not make sense as a target to me. I don't get it.
I agree.
That's still
Jamie,
one.
We gotta move past that.
I can't get past it because you know what? As grumbly and grumpy as I am in general, my tendency about prospects and about the system is always towards optimism, and I don't have any optimism about him. I don't get the fit. I don't think he's good. I don't understand. And like Brock Stewart is already on the IL for the Dodgers, which sucks. I wish he would just get some healthy run, and so maybe it was just about they couldn't get anyone they thought was reasonable, but it just still doesn't make sense to me.
And if he doesn't start the season on the opening day roster next year, it will tell you exactly how much value Brock Stewart had as a trade piece.
Fair. Okay, let's move on. God, we've still got like 4 trades to talk about. Danny Coulombe trade, which I do believe we just like forgot about in a previous episode, so we should talk about it now. Danny Coulombe, I feel like, was traded for high A Danny Coulombe. So Danny Coulombe was moved to the Rangers. The Twins got back left-handed pitcher Garrett Horn, which, don't tell me my nerdiness doesn't have some utility, was 345th on the 2024 consensus board, which went 600 deep. So there's value in it. He was 6th-round pick of the Texas Rangers, signed for $250,000 out of Liberty University. In 2025, he's pitched 32.1 innings. Really solid numbers overall. 32.3% strikeout rate, walking a little bit too many, 9.4%, a 3.06 ERA, a 3.27 FIP. And I think the consensus or the feeling was that people felt like this was a bit light because Coulomb was really one of the better lefty relievers on the market. But I feel like Horn is a semi-interesting return, and it's very much like a wait and see from my perspective after he makes the challenging jump, which will be to Double-A, presumably at some point in 2026. What do you make of Horn?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there was decent value in that just because whenever you're giving up a rental who, I mean, when he signed like a $3 million deal, like he was one of the late ads, played well, was hurt, pitched well, was hurt. Garrett Horn, if he's drafted by the Twins in 2024 in round 6, I mean, how do we feel about that? We feel like, we can maybe add some tools to this. It's a lefty who absolutely cut up rookie ball because you should in 6 innings, although he did give up a home run, and then went to low A where he was not as good, but that makes sense. Like he hasn't even got to the point where he's playing against guys that were as good as, well, Liberty's not, I mean, elite, but he's finally getting to the point where it's like, okay, now I'm pitching against guys that I pitched against in college. So again, wait and see. It's not a terrible trade because if you don't trade Coulomb, you're watching him walk at the end of the year for nothing. So you get a somewhat intriguing arm in return.
Yep.
Take it.
Carlos Correa was traded to the Houston Astros. We will not be discussing this trade. I'm not doing this trade the dignity of digging into the poor prospect who was sent to Minnesota, who was a free agent signing to High A. It's just not cool. I don't have anything to say about this.
You don't want to talk about the Carlos Correa trade because your only lead up was it's not happening. It's not happening.
Hey, you know what? As much as it pains me to say it, Geremy, you were right and I was wrong. But it created some fun entertainment for the masses. Yeah, don't get used to it, buddy. Let's talk about Willie Castro. Willie Castro was traded to the Chicago Cubs. The Twins got a pair of arms in return, Ryan Gallagher and Sam Armstrong. Let me get this take out the way. This is the trade I've changed my mind on the most since it was made, when I was like,
You hated it.
But I didn't hate it.
You thought they got 2 worthless arms.
I was not as informed as I needed to be about said arms. Gallagher is interesting. Not Horn. Armstrong, I don't think is gonna get enough swing and miss to be a guy. Like he had a really good start in Double-A the other day where he went 7 innings and struck out 1. Like that's just not gonna work long term. Hopefully I'm wrong. Gallagher is interesting. So at Double-A, it's like 36 innings. It's not a ton of strikeouts, but he's also not walking a ton of guys. He had one extremely impressive start for Wichita so far. It is a really good fastball shape. This is a prime get him to velo camp dude because his fastball sits like 93. And if they can get him sitting like, I don't know, 95, grab some 96s, suddenly that becomes a different proposition. And he settles in nicely along with like CJ Culpepper and a cluster of other guys as kind of like the next wave after the next wave of potential starters. And so I suppose what I'm saying is if you can get a guy who has a chance to start at all, that's pretty interesting. And you know, over his whole 2025 stint in the minors, it's 27% strikeout rate and a 5.4% walk rate and a 367 FIP across High A and Double-A. You liked Gallagher and this return more from the jump, so tell us your thoughts now. He's got a couple of starts under his belt.
Yeah, Gallagher. We talked about you had left the stream that night, but he kind of popped up I get the impression, and maybe I'm completely off, but that he was someone that the Twins really liked in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Sacramento to Santa Barbara, like this is the Twins. This is where the Twins do a lot of their. Yeah, I mean that's their stomping ground. So, low velo guys are guys that aren't low velo after the Twins deal with them. And I don't know that he projects as like, could he be a top of the line guy? I don't see that. I mean, there's always a chance, right? There's always a chance. But if his most likely outcome is to be a back end starter and eat up innings like a Nick Blackburn type,
mm-hmm.
there's certainly value there. And so I'm good with this. You say he hasn't struck out a ton in Double A.
Except that one start.
Win surge, 13 strikeouts in 16 innings, but previous to that at high A, he had 85 strikeouts in like 72 innings.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's the potential to be there. Gallagher would be a guy, like if you said, give me a list of 5 guys that are like flying under the radar that could make huge jumps in a year from now, he would be someone I would put on a relatively short list.
Yeah. I agree with that. Second time I've agreed with you or told you you're right tonight. Bad for me.
We should probably stop.
That means we've been going too long. Okay, we got a couple more to dig into here. Griffin Jack's trade. I think this is one that didn't land well with people, but I think there's a lot of value here potentially. Traded straight up for Taj Bradley. Bradley, it's hard to believe, at the age of 24, has logged close to 350 major league innings. He's already put up about 4 F-WAR so far in his career. If you look at Zips as a 3-year projection, he's projected for 5.7 WAR over the next 3 seasons. So basically a 2-win pitcher every season. And he's never quite, I think it's fair to say, and you can tell me if you disagree, the stuff and the production has never quite met. Like, take the most basic of kind of markers here, right? Like FIP, 2023, 479, 2024, 409, 2025, 422. You want to see him get in the 3s. The strikeout rate, in order to make that jump from like kind of back end guy to middle of the rotation guy or potentially playoff caliber guy, the strikeout numbers have taken a significant dip. 11 per 9, 2023, 10 per 9, 2024, 7.6 per 9, pardon me, in 2025. So he's another guy who has reported to St. Paul, with SWR and Pablo likely back for the big league rotation soon. I don't get the sense that they're in any rush for Bradley to be up with the big league team, barring another injury. What do you make of him as an acquisition, his start with the Twins? He's been solid enough at St. Paul, and kind of how he fits into the rotation picture long term here.
So his first start as a Saint, he went 6 innings, gave up a solo home run, struck out 4 or 5 hits. His last 2 starts against Omaha, just over 8 innings, 16 hits, 11 earned runs, 3 home runs. He's been kind of bad. Yeah. But I want to go back to what you said, like the production hasn't matched the stuff.
Yeah.
At what age do we look for that? Because you mentioned 300 innings. Maybe it's like, oh, you need to have 2,000 at bats before we really know who you are as a hitter. But I think, in his defense, at what age? I mean, he's 24. He's young. Like if you listed the pitchers by age,
yeah,
he's a year younger than Zebby. He's like, he could still be a prospect. He's probably not much older than Mick Abel. Is he even older than Mick Abel? Like
24 and 5 months, so very slightly. Because didn't you say Abel was just turned 24?
Abel just turned 24. Bradley's 24. 24.4. What do I got? Zebby's 25.2. Festa's 25.5. Sim is almost 25.
Yeah.
Like he's still young, and so you're gonna take the ups and the downs. And at this point, I would guess the direction probably was like, here's what you're gonna do in St. Paul.
Throw 35 splitters in a row. Go.
We don't care if the ball gets hit out of the park. We don't care.
Yeah.
We just need you to do this. And I honestly think, like, if I had to, I would consider him a favorite to be in the opening day rotation for next year.
100%.
And so you weren't, you bought low on him and you sold high on Jax. And I think that that's a fair thing to say. You're taking a full step back and looking at this, like, who provides more value to an organization? Is it Bradley or is it Jax?
Bradley, 100%.
Right, but that's the part that people are never gonna understand, because Griffin Jax is a dominant reliever when his stuff was right, and Taj Bradley is a struggling young starting pitcher.
Yeah,
who I would put money on, if he ends up in the bullpen, will be every bit as good as Griffin Jax.
Yep, I think that's fair. Yeah, I'm really interested in Bradley and what that outlook is for next year. I agree with you. I think he would be a preseason favorite just based on seniority and like number of innings logged to start in the rotation in 2026. Use the next 6 weeks to get him right. If you're going to add a pitch, add a pitch. If you want him to work on the splitter, have him work on the splitter. But they want to get him back to a place where he's generating enough miss and swing and miss to be a viable, solid mid-rotation piece and keep you in games, right? That's really what they're looking for from him. And I think this trade is going to be one where there's going to be this tension between how we looked at it at the time when it happened and then how we look back on it when it's all said and done and we do the math on the value that the Twins got for Griffin Jax.
Well, and I mean, you look at his game log. End of May, he struck out 7 against the Astros in 6 innings, 2 earned runs. Against the Twins, May 27th, 7 innings, 6 strikeouts, 2 earned runs. Against the Astros, June 1st, 7 innings, 10 strikeouts, no earned runs. I mean, as recently as, and the Orioles aren't great, but July 18th, 2 weeks before the trade, 6 strikeouts in 6 innings, and 6 shutout innings, 3 hits, 1 walk. Like, there's certainly stuff there. Things just went real bad to his next start against the White Sox. He got 5 outs, gave up 4 runs, walked 3, and didn't strike anybody out. It was like time for a reset. And I'm all about letting the Twins hit that reset button instead of the Rays.
Yep. I'm with it. Okay, last one we're going to talk about, the Louis Varland trade. This was the buzzer beater. I don't want to talk about Alan Roden unless you especially do. He went down. It was announced today that he's having thumb surgery, so he's done for the year. That is a bummer, just because you wanted to try and work out some of the warts and make the adjustment now in the next 5 weeks when it doesn't matter. And now you got to wait till spring to figure that out. But who I'm interested in talking about with you is who I describe as the main acquisition here, which is Kendry Rojas, 22-year-old Cuban left-hander, listed at 6'2", 190, incredibly fluid mover on the mound. And as of recently, a frequenter of hipster top 100 prospect lists. He's been on a few, not necessarily the like biggest industry ones like Pipeline, but if you look at like Just Baseball, he's on their top 100 prospect list. Thomas Nestico does one. He's a TJ Stats Online. I think Kendry Rojas is on his. Rojas has looked pretty mixed. I've tried to get as much of him as possible watching what he's done at AAA so far. He's walked too many guys. He's given up some hits. And this is a profile where, like, it's kind of like 4 good pitches with 1 really good one in his changeup. But the stuff isn't going to wow you in the same way that Prielipp does, but it's just such an easy, like 95 out the hand that he's a guy who you could just see in a couple of years with some refinement, with some experience. And this is a guy who's only logged 14 AAA innings. So we're on the front end here. But you could see him developing into a really nice, at worst, high leverage bullpen arm, but at best, middle of the rotation starter for the Twins from the left side, which feels pretty exciting. Have you seen Rojas much yet? What do you make of this acquisition? How he's done so far, even though it's been a little up and down for St. Paul?
Yeah, I'm always a fan of adding young, active, talented arms, and so kind of going through his stuff. Pitched a little bit high A. Didn't give up any home runs at all. Didn't give up any home runs till his last Double-A appearance for New Hampshire. Gave up 2 home runs in a game where he got hit around. Gets promoted to Buffalo, gives up 2 home runs. Like, he's given up 6 home runs all year, and they've been in his last 4 starts, all of them. And so I feel like there's some tinkering that's either been done or needs to be done. 9 strikeouts in 9 innings with the Saints, and has walked 5. Like that number's kind of high, but the ceiling is the ceiling is high enough that you could handle the floor being a little more questionable.
100%.
And again, you can take risks. Not that Rojas is like more risky, but you can take more risks when you have all the other stuff. And it's like there's some certainty, as much as you can ever speak to certainty with pitching prospects. It's very hard, but there's some certainty with Mick Abel. There's some hopeful certainty with Taj Bradley, and then when you throw in a Rojas type, like that just is kind of icing on the cake.
Yeah.
Because now there's a handful of lefties that are close, and they don't all need to pan out as starters. If one of Rojas or Prielipp can start and the other is a down at reliever, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's exciting. And then you have guys, with the lower levels. Dason Hill had just made his Cedar Rapids debut, gave up some runs, but also had the strike zone, and Dason Hill's Cedar Rapids debut was a crime. That's all I'm going to say. Last thing, dude, just forgot a note that I wanted to put in because new international big board out of Baseball Americas today. So,
I saw that. I didn't read it, but I saw it.
Great work from Ben Badler, who was a former guest of this parish once upon a time. Minnesota Twins expected to sign, let's get everybody mad, Venezuelan shortstop and Manuel Merlot to a top 30 bonus in the forthcoming international signing period. Switch hitting shortstop, listed at 6'1", 180. So that's your first of many, many names, but he is going to be one of the bigger bonus guys, and they organize them that way at BA as opposed to trying to rank them by talent.
Right.
So it looks like he's going to be the headliner, and always fun to dig in on those guys. Maybe we'll get Ben back on closer to the window and talk through some of the dudes the Twins are acquiring this year.
So everybody's a shortstop or center fielder.
Yep.
Occasionally a catcher.
No pitchers.
Hardly ever pitchers. Nobody ever signs a international free agent as a first baseman.
Yep.
Third baseman, pretty rare because those are shortstops. Second baseman, pretty rare. So those are shortstops. Corner outfielders, pretty rare because those are center fielders. So, it's always sweet about the guys that we'll be able to follow as Twins in a dozen years.
Yeah, let's go. Okay, that'll do us for today. We will be back next week with a brand new episode. We still got guests on the horizon, working on scheduling stuff with that. But we will continue to dig in on all things Minnesota Twins minor leagues. Until then, thank you guys for taking the time to check out the show. Take it easy. We will catch you.